always thought the worst betrayal would be a lipstick on the collar, not a stuffed animal under the guest bed. It was a Tuesday, the kind of boring weekday where your biggest concern should be whether to DoorDash sushi or tacos. My husband, Derek, had left for a business trip that morning, his third in 2 months. He kissed me goodbye like always. Same cologne, same fake smile. We'd been married for 6 years, comfortable, predictable. The kind of marriage where you stop, questioning things because questioning feels rude, or maybe dangerous. He said he'd be in Chicago for a networking event. Left before sunrise, suitcase in hand, phone on Do Not Disturb before he even got to the car. That should have been the first red flag. But I brushed it off. Told myself I was being clingy. By 10 a.m., I was already spiraling, not from anything specific, just a gut feeling. Women know, it's not logic. It's instinct. I started doing laundry, just to distract myself. I stripped the guest bed, which we never used unless his brother stayed over. As I bent down to grab the fitted sheet, something caught my eye. A sliver of fabric. Pink. Fuzzy. I reached under the bed and pulled out a small plush unicorn, one of those keychain-sized ones, with glitter on the hooves and a tiny pink bow. Not ours. Not mine. Not anything I'd ever seen. It wasn't just out of place. It was fresh. Clean. Like someone had dropped it there recently. I stared at it. For a full minute, heart pounding like a war drum. I texted him immediately. "Did you clean under the guest bed?" He replied 3 hours later. "What? No. Why would I?" I didn't respond. I walked through the apartment like it was a crime. Scene. Every drawer. Every cabinet. I found a half-empty water bottle under the couch. A single hair tie, blonde, near the base of the toilet. And a receipt from a sushi place in our town dated 2 days ago, shoved into his coat pocket. The coat. He took on business trips. Something shattered inside me. I waited until 3 a.m., heart racing, brain spinning. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into the iPad we used to share. Same Apple ID, same syncing. His messages were still connected, and that's when I saw her name. Her name was Lexi, saved in his phone as LJ Marketing. Cute, professional, harmless, until you open the thread. The messages were vile in their intimacy, not just flirty, familiar, like a language built over time. "Miss your coffee? Breath this morning. Next time, don't forget the red lace one. You left your unicorn again." That last message made me physically nauseous. The unicorn. That unicorn. It wasn't just a toy. It was a breadcrumb. A trophy almost. Left behind in my home like a calling card. I could see her in my mind, laughing on my guest bed, using my towels, wearing nothing and thinking she'd won. I scrolled deeper. Photos. A few blurred nudes. A hotel mirror selfie with my husband's suitcase in the background. She was wearing his shirt, the same one he wore on our last anniversary. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. The timestamps didn't lie. Half the trips he'd taken in the last 3 months, fabricated. He wasn't in Chicago, or Dallas, or Denver. He was here, in our town, playing house in my absence. I could barely feel my hands. I started shaking. The iPad slid off my lap and hit the floor. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't look at it anymore. I wanted to call someone. Jess, my sister, anyone. But I didn't. I just sat there, in the dark, hearing the faint sound of the neighbor's TV through the wall, like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I felt stupid. Stupid for trusting him. Stupid for not noticing. Stupid for every time I'd told someone, "Derek's just tired from work," but mostly I felt set up. Because it wasn't just that he cheated. It's where he did it. How he did it. In our home. In our bed. In my world. Built on his lies. And that's when the rage kicked in. I stopped crying. I opened my notes app, started documenting everything: dates, messages, receipts, photos. I became my own private investigator. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. But I was done playing the role of the unsuspecting wife, because now I knew, and knowing changed everything. He came back Thursday evening, suitcase in hand, looking like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," he said, setting his bag down by the door. "You look tired. Everything okay?" It took everything in me not to launch the unicorn at his face. I nodded. "Just a long week." My voice was steady, controlled. He didn't deserve my rage yet, not until I made him squirm. He kissed my cheek, and I froze. It was a reflex, letting him get close. But this time, it felt like poison. Like I was letting the enemy past my front line. I followed him down the hallway, heart pounding. He started unpacking while I watched from the doorway. He didn't notice how stiff I was, or how my arms were crossed like armor. Then I asked, "So, how was Chicago?" He didn't miss a beat. Cold, boring, a lot of sitting around, same old. My stomach flipped. I was watching a man lie to my face. Easily, casually, like breathing, I nodded slowly. "Didn't know they had Nobu in Chicago." He paused. "What? Nobu? You went there Tuesday night, right?" I showed him the receipt from his coat pocket, the one I'd photographed earlier. His face paled. He blinked. "Oh, yeah. I went with some clients." Funny. That's not what Lexi said. Silence. He dropped the shirt he was folding. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the iPad and flipped it open, clicked the thread, turned it to face him. The color drained from his face like a sink unplugged. His mouth opened. No words came out. "I know everything," I said, calm, icy. The texts, the lies, the unicorn under the bed. That broke him. He stepped forward, hands up like I was a hostage negotiator. "It's not what you think." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't insult my intelligence. Don't stand in this house and gaslight me again." He went quiet. For a full 30 seconds, he just stood there, shoulders sinking. Then finally, it was just a fling. It didn't mean anything. That was the worst part. The nothingness. Like I was supposed to feel better knowing I'd been destroyed for fun. He tried to reach for my hand. I pulled away like his skin burned. "I want you out," I said, voice shaking now. "Tonight." He laughed, bitter and low. "You're being dramatic." I stepped forward, eyes locked on his. "I haven't even started." He didn't leave that night. Said he needed time to process. Like he was the victim here. He slept on the couch while I stayed locked in our bedroom, seething, clutching my phone like a weapon. At 3 a.m., I texted Jess, "I need help." She showed up before sunrise. No questions, no judgment, just a fierce hug and a thermos of black coffee. I told her everything. The unicorn, the messages, his blank, pathetic face when I showed him the proof. "You want him gone?" she asked. "Because I know a lawyer." And just like that, I snapped out of survival mode and into revenge mode. While he moped around like a grounded teenager, I contacted the attorney Jess recommended. She was brilliant, brutal, and not here to coddle me. "He violated marital trust, used your home to conduct the affair, and possibly misrepresented business expenses," she said. "Let's dig." We started building the case. Meanwhile, I moved his things into the guest room, the same bed where she probably laid, giggling over wine, mocking me with that stupid unicorn. I didn't even flinch anymore. Just dropped his socks into a box, labeled lies. He didn't fight it. Just kept asking, "Can't we talk?" Talk? Now he wanted to talk? The man who played house with another woman in my own home? I responded with silence and legal paperwork. The petition was filed within the week. Divorce on grounds of infidelity and emotional cruelty. My lawyer served him while he was on another trip. The irony was delicious. The next explosion came when I found out he'd used our joint account to pay for Lexi's plane tickets, business class. Of course, he was always so generous when it came to impressing strangers. I closed the account, froze the credit cards, reported the unauthorized charges. Then, I changed every password, every key, every lock. The house felt different. After that, lighter, like it was shedding him piece by piece. Then came the Instagram moment. I posted a photo of me and Jess, laughing in the kitchen. Caption: "Some people take out the trash on Tuesdays. I took mine out for good." He saw it. I know he did, because he texted me furious. "Wow, you really want to humiliate me publicly?" I replied with one word. Yes, because humiliation was the least he deserved. The day he officially moved out, I didn't cry. Not at first. I watched him load boxes into his car like he was moving dorm rooms, not walking out of a 6-year marriage. He didn't say goodbye, didn't even look back, just slammed the trunk and drove off. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loud, filled with echoes, with all the words I'd never get to say. I sat on the edge of the now too big bed, staring at the dent in the pillow where his head used to rest. That's when it hit me. Not just what he'd done, but what I'd lost. Not him. Me. I'd lost the version of myself who believed in forever. The woman who smiled when he came home, who planned vacations, saved screenshots of sweet texts, laughed at inside jokes. I mourned her. The grief was sneaky. It didn't show up in sobs. It came in waves of exhaustion. In forgetting to eat. In hating every love song on the radio. In walking past mirrors and not recognizing the woman looking back. I started therapy. I needed help. Because I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with the collapse of an entire identity. Who was I, if not his wife? The therapist said something that stuck with me. "You're not rebuilding her. You're becoming you. Maybe for the first time." I started journaling, writing down every ugly thought, every memory that hurt. I filled an entire notebook in a week. Jess took me out one night, karaoke and tequila. I sang horribly, cried in the bathroom, laughed so hard I snorted. It was the most alive I'd felt in months. Meanwhile, the legal process moved on. My lawyer uncovered more. Personal purchases disguised as business expenses, gifts for Lexi, hotel upgrades, a whole secret financial life. It wasn't just adultery, it was fraud. But weirdly, the more I uncovered, the less I hurt. Because I finally understood he was broken long before he broke me and his damage. It was never my responsibility to fix, so I stopped trying. I started waking up earlier, working out again, listening to true crime podcasts instead of sad music. I painted the guest room, tossed the mattress, bought a new one with bright orange, sheets, because I wanted color in my life again. The unicorn? I burned it in a fire pit behind Jess's place. We watched it melt, silent, sipping wine. It was symbolic and petty and perfect. It wasn't closure. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Just when I thought I'd seen the worst of him, the universe handed me one more slap. It came in the form of an email from a woman named Madeline. Subject line: "I think we need to talk." At first, I thought it was spam, but something about it made me click. Her message was short, almost apologetic. "Hi, I don't know how to say this, But I think your husband and I were seeing each other at the same time. I had no idea he was married. Please, check the dates. Attached were screenshots, dozens of them. Her text with him, starting almost a year ago. Longer than Lexi, longer than anyone I knew about. He'd told her he was divorced, said he and I just lived together for now. He talked about how I was toxic and emotionally unstable. She believed him. They went on trips. Dubai, places he told me he was flying for work. They had inside jokes, matching tattoos. My stomach turned. I replied immediately, told her everything. She cried. We ended up talking for over an hour on the phone. Two strangers, united by a man who'd spun the same web around both of us. She was devastated, not just because he lied, but because she'd met his family, his mother, his niece, and they all played along. He didn't just cheat, he lived a second life. One where I was the burden and she was the fantasy. One where he cast himself as the poor, misunderstood man with a crazy wife. I was furious, not just for me, for her, for how easily he discarded people, how effortlessly he molded reality to fit whatever story made him look like the victim. Madeline ended up sending me even more. Photos, receipts, plane tickets. One of the hotels was the same one he stayed at with Lexi. Same room type, same playlist. He didn't even bother being original. It became clear. Lexi wasn't the exception. She was the pattern. And I was just the foundation he built his lies on, but not anymore. I sent the new evidence to my lawyer. She added it to the file. It made the case stronger. Not just morally, but legally. Proved intent, proved character, proved I hadn't been paranoid. That week, I broke down in the grocery store, right between the cereal and frozen waffles, just collapsed against the cart, sobbing, because the weight of everything finally cracked me open. But the woman who helped me up, she didn't ask what was wrong. She just said, "Whatever it is, I hope you burn it to the ground and rise." And that's exactly what I planned to do. By the time the court date was set, I no longer cared if he showed up. I wasn't doing this for revenge anymore. I was doing it for me. For the version of myself who stayed quiet too long. For Madeline. For every woman who'd ever been lied to and gaslit by someone who pretended to love them. I decluttered the house. Not just his stuff, but anything that reminded me of her. Of them. The blanket we bought on our honeymoon? Gone. The coffee maker he loved? Donated. Every trace of his taste, his voice, his energy, removed like rot. The space finally felt like mine. I joined a boxing gym. It started as a joke. Jess dared me to try a class. But somewhere between the second and third round, something clicked. Every punch felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Every bead of sweat felt like proof that I was still here. I started, sleeping again, eating better, laughing, and not just at memes. Real laughs, the kind that shake your ribs. The court ruled in my favor. Full divorce, plus reimbursement for shared funds he misused. It wasn't a fortune, but it was justice. The lawyer called it a clean break. But I knew better. There's no such thing as a clean break from someone who tried to erase you. One night, I lit a candle and wrote a letter I'd never send. I told him everything. How he'd broken something sacred. How he'd underestimated me. How I'd rebuilt a life he'd never be welcome in again. Then I burned the letter. Madeline and I kept in touch. She started therapy too. We even met, for coffee once. It wasn't awkward, just strange, like looking into a mirror that spoke a different language. We hugged goodbye, and I thanked her. Not for the pain, but for the truth. I realized then, sometimes your allies come from the wreckage. My business grew. I started offering consulting to other women-owned startups. Shared my story, carefully, powerfully, not for attention, for impact. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. And when I passed that guest room, now a home office, I didn't flinch. I smiled, because I remembered what used to be there, and how far I'd come since. A year later, I barely recognized the woman I used to be. She was quieter, softer, still hopeful, but afraid to admit when something felt off. She ignored the red flags, made excuses, clung to love like it was a life raft. I don't blame her, but I'm not her anymore. The guest bed's gone. So is the unicorn, the old mattress, and the version of me who tolerated lies for the sake of peace. In their place? Bright shelves, books I love, a framed quote that reads, "You were never too much and they were never enough." Every morning, I wake up in a space that feels like me. Coffee in hand, music on, windows open. Peace isn't loud, it's earned. I haven't heard from him in months. Not since the ruling, not since I stopped replying. I think he got the message. Lexi disappeared from his socials. So did Madeline, who last I heard was dating someone new, someone kind, someone honest. As for me, I'm not dating yet. Not seriously. I flirt, I go out, I enjoy myself. But I no longer measure my worth in someone else's attention. I don't need to be chosen. I choose myself. Jess and I took a trip to the mountains, just the two of us. We sat around a fire pit, wine in hand, stars above, and she said something I'll never forget. You didn't just survive him, you outgrew him. And it's true, he used to be my whole sky. Now, he's just a cautionary tale. I still get messages from women who saw my post, heard my story, followed the breadcrumbs of their own gut feelings. Some of them cried. Some of them left. Some of them started over. All of them were stronger than they knew. If you're reading this, if you've ever doubted what your body, your heart, your intuition is screaming at you, let this be your sign. Look under the bed. Open the messages. Ask the question you're afraid to ask. Because truth hurts, yes, but lies destroy. And once you find the truth, I promise, you'll never settle for crumbs again.